This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
Alabama Politics. Folks, we're fortunate tonight to have as our guest Bill Britt, who is the editor, publisher, and my tie's not straight, John. Look at this. Get my tie straight.
This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to Alabama Politics. Folks, we're fortunate tonight to have as our guest Bill Britt, who is the owner, publisher, organizer, chief cook and bottle washer of the Alabama Political Reporter. Well, now he's got a great wife, Susan, who helps him with it a good bit, but a good many of y'all probably will read his work every day online, Alabama Political Reporter. He's on top of it. Folks, I'm here to tell you that Bill Britt is a premier investigative journalist in Alabama. He's been the spearhead of every kind of investigative political story in the state the last 5 or 10 years, and he and his wife Susan work at it, and they're trustworthy, and they do a good job with it. And Bill, it's good to have you on the show.
Thank you, Steve. It's good to be here, and of course, you know, we're friends, and I read you every week, and your column appears on our website at AO Reporter, and I want to thank you for having me on.
I appreciate you running me every week. Bill and I met each other. I'm in almost every small and middle-sized paper in Alabama, and I go out periodically and visit the papers, and old Bill was at the St. Clair News-Aegis.
Yeah.
Susan was there with you, wasn't she?
Yeah.
What years would you start have that paper?
Well, and you know what? Right offhand, I don't remember. I think it was probably, we were there about 5 years, I guess, and you know, we love St. Clair County and the folks.
Y'all live there, don't you?
We lived there then. We
Etowah now.
Yeah, we moved back to the home place in Etowah County.
Well, right close by, yeah.
Yeah, it is. We're at the foot of Sand Mountain out there. It just is beautiful. We got a little farm and been in the family for 5 generations. And
that's the prettiest part of Alabama.
we love that. We love it. You know, we got a place down here, and of course we work down here, but we get more work done up there than we do down
now,
here.
is your family or Susan's from up there?
Susan's family's from up
and
there.
right around Sand Mountain?
Yeah.
What town's close to there?
Well, Gadsden.
I knew Gadsden. What is it?
Attala. And we're sandwiched between Attala and Boaz.
Yeah. I like old Craig Forward.
Oh, yeah.
I had Craig on the show not long ago.
Yeah.
His daddy, Joe, and I served together.
I didn't know that.
We went in the house together. We were good buddies.
Well, we've known Craig for a long, long time, you know, and Larry Means from up there. Larry Means was a friend of Susan's brother, and so we've known those guys for a long time.
Bill, you know what's changed so much about Alabama? Towns like Gadsden, who were tired. Was it a Goodyear plant up there?
Yeah, it was a Goodyear plant, steel mill.
Yeah, towns like Gadsden and Florence, and just Tuscaloosa even, every city in Alabama, when you and I were young boys, we were the most unionized state.
Yeah.
You couldn't run in Etowah County. I mean, you had to have a labor endorsement. You had to have a labor endorsement in Etowah. Labor's just gone by the wayside.
It has.
Organized labor's gone.
And it has, and I don't, you know, I see the problems they had back then, but, you know, I don't know that we don't have the same problems that caused the unions to be organized in the first place. They seem to be coming back.
Good. Well, that's, I remember one time when I was a little boy, you think about this, that every major, we were not only the most unionized state in the South, percentage-wise, we compare with the rest of the country. You know, I mean, you think about all you go from one end of the state to the other. The Florence, Sheffield, Tuscaloosa. Tuscaloosa's paper mills. Sheffield was that aluminum plant, Reynolds Aluminum. Every TVA worker was unionized. Gadsden was the most unionized city, except for Birmingham, with the steel workers.
Right.
Then the Mobile dock workers were unionized.
Right. Well, you know, and there were a lot of problems with the unions, but you know what we're seeing today, and I didn't really mean to get off on this, but you brought up a good point, is that you know, when we were kids, a man could have a job at a factory and support a family.
Yeah.
And his wife didn't have to work. She could work if she wanted to, but they made enough working at those factories that, shoot, they could support a family. They could buy a new car every couple of years.
Yeah.
We just don't have those jobs. They're gone, and we haven't figured out how to replace them yet. So we have a lot of income disparity, and folks that are working 2 and 3 jobs right here in our state. Folks are working hard but not getting ahead.
Bill, what year did you branch out from the print media? I want to defend my little small town, but middle-sized papers. They're holding their own.
Yes, they are.
They're holding their own. But you saw the writing on the wall that online news was the way to go for the future. Like, your readership would be a lot younger than mine in newspapers. I mean, you have all age
that's
groups,
right. That's right.
But I don't know of many people under 40 that read print news anymore.
They really don't. And Susan and I were fortunate back in the mid-90s. We got to go to New York City and work in the tech sector, and we put a number of news products online. We took them from being print or TV, and we were able to put them online. So we were early adapters of that technology. So we actually came back from New York City. We came home after a year after 9/11 because my parents had fallen ill, and we wanted to take care of them, and so we freelanced and took care of them.
What year is this now, about 2001?
Yeah, it was, yeah. And that's, so we came back, and then after they passed, we decided that we wanted to start back in the newspaper business because we'd had to close down our, you know, and we thought of the little newspaper we did. And then we said, you know, we really need to look to the future because we've been working in the future.
You saw it, his handwriting was on the wall.
Yeah, it was on the wall. And you know what we also saw, and this is not to disparage any of our colleagues, but we didn't see anybody that would specialize in one thing. And I think that's one thing that the internet's brought us is if you want something on sports, you usually have a favorite site that's going to give you insight that you can't get anywhere else. So we said, why not do that about Alabama politics? And so it was a good time, you know, 2010, these guys were ramping up. It was going to be hot races. And so we said, we really need to do this. We need to specialize in one thing, not national, but state politics. And, you know, because that's really the only way people can make a difference. They talk about Washington all the time, but it's hard to change Washington. You know, it only takes a few hundred votes to change Montgomery.
Bill, you know, too, the thing about it is, concurrently with you, what I said leading into the show, concurrently with the demise of the, what I call city papers, the daily city papers, the Birmingham News, the Mobile Press Register, the Huntsville Times, their demise, the online got them. That everybody was going online, so they went online, whatever. But they also have lost revenue, and so therefore they don't have the resources that when I was a boy down here as a page, they had 2 or 3 reporters, and they were actually investigative.
Yeah, sure.
You see, that's where the void is filled. You have become, the void is that you actually do investigative reporting.
Well,
nobody, those big city papers aren't investigating anything anymore.
Well,
no, it's like the state just runs around. You can be the biggest crook in the state, nobody's going to expose you.
Well, you know, these places, they've got boards up in the newsroom, and you know, you get graded on how many people click on your story or how many people comment on your story. And there's no way to write a news story. You got to write a news story about the facts, not that you get clicks or lit up on a board. But I tell you what, one of the other things we've noticed, and you know this to be true, you know, years ago, the guys that covered the State House had covered everything under the sun before they got to get that State House beat. So you had extensive knowledge of the news, crime scenes, local politics, all that stuff. Now they hire folks that, you know, they may be around 2 or 3, 4 years, but they don't really understand how people's mind works and how this process works. And so you can't get there. You know, unfortunately, they have to do so much hard work. They just might as well be stenographers. They just listen to what they tell them and believe it.
Yeah. Bill, now you started Alabama Political Reporter then in about 2005, something like that?
I think that's right.
About that time.
Yeah.
So you've been,
No, not 2005. I'm sorry. No, it would have been. So this is 16. We've been at it 5 years.
Five? That's I thought
Yeah,
been about 10 years, but it's only been 5 years.
It's only been 5. Yeah.
Okay.
But you and I met about 10 years ago.
No, we
I
met
think.
more than 10 years
Yeah,
ago.
probably so.
We've known each other because of the St. Clair News Aegis,
Yeah.
but the online Alabama
Yeah.
Reporter has been about 5 years.
5 years, and we've had the TV show for 3.
I love the V. If y'all don't ever watch, tell our viewers when the V comes on every Sunday morning.
Well, it's Sunday morning here in Montgomery. It comes on at 11 o'clock here on CBS. I will let you guys, your viewers will be the first to know. We are going back statewide in the next 3-4 weeks.
So it's only been in Montgomery in recent times?
Yeah,
Okay.
we were on in Huntsville and Birmingham, but Mr. Hubbard decided that he really didn't think we should have advertisers because we were writing stories that got him kind of indicted.
So the last few years, y'all have only been on in Montgomery?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I knew I was able to watch in Montgomery, you know.
Yeah.
So
But-
y'all going to go Birmingham and Huntsville now?
And Mobile.
Mobile.
And anybody can watch us online.
Right.
As soon as we post the show to the television station, we post it online. So if they'll go to our website at Alabama or alreporter.com, they can watch it right there.
Good. And a lot of people do watch that.
Yeah, they do.
Like Netflix and all now, you know,
Sure,
everybody watches
sure.
TV that way.
Sure.
People John them's age. But hey, Bill, tell our viewers, talking about Hubbard, I give you credit, and I've done this throughout the state. You were the one who got the ball rolling on the Mike Hubbard story, I believe. I'm going to give you credit for that. And then the Attorney General's office picked up on it. Give us the chronology of that, if you would. How you sort of wrote about that thing at first, how it got going, and what year it was. And
Yeah, it was.
it's not exactly, but ballpark, you know.
Well, it actually started 3 years and 8 months ago this month. It was 3 years, 8 months. 3 years, 7 months when he was convicted. What happened was, we were covering the State House. You know, the Republicans had taken over, and we wanted to see what all they were doing. We were down here at the State House. And
So about the same year y'all reporter started, was
yeah,
about 2000.
yeah. So we came down. It was for session, and you know, we started seeing some things that bothered us. And by 2011, there were things that, you know, we saw that it was like this bill would pass, and then this money would end up over at some PAC that had Hubbard involved in it, and we just saw little things like that. And I was like, man, Susan and I were talking. We go, there's something wrong here. You know, we were just really kind of taken back. Because we weren't expecting that, because the Republicans had ran on no corruption, toughest ethics laws in the world and all that. So I met with then Speaker Hubbard, and I met with some other folks and started asking some questions and found that they had not been forthcoming. And I have a rule. You can basically do anything that you want to do as long as you're not breaking the law, and you can, as long as you're not, if you got a girlfriend or whatever, I might not approve of it, but as long as you're not spending state money on it, it doesn't bother me. But one thing you can't do is, if I ask you a question, lie to me.
Yeah.
Because if you lie to me, then I'm coming for you as best I can to find out what else you're lying about. So really, one of the first things they lied about was the Porch Creek money that they got. That was one of them. They said the Porch Creek was trying to infiltrate the Republican Party, so they had given money that went to various candidates. And so Susan and I hopped in the car and drove down, visited with Porch Creek, and we stayed around for 2 or 3 days and just watched how they operate and all that. They didn't know who we were just guests. So then we arranged a meeting and asked the Porch Creek about it, and they said, oh yeah, they came down here and asked us for it. And so we wrote up that story. We looked into Mr. Hubbard and found he had that gas company contract.
He already had that contract
Yeah,
right off the bat.
yeah, he did. So then from there, it was just looking at, you know,
So he
following.
had that gas contract early on.
Yeah, he did, and he was getting $10,000. I think it was $10,000 or $12,000 a month on that thing, and we were the only people that thought it was fishy.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's like, you read the ethics law and you read that. Now they got him off on that one, but he had other contracts, And, you know, it was just those types of things. You know, we followed where they took the money from the Republican Party, funneled it through, Mike's or another business. In this case, it was that one down in Florida, Majority Strategies, and then back to Mike's business. Well, we had noticed that he and Bob Riley had done that before. We wrote about that, but there was a prior act, and where they had taken money. Remember when they had the big bingo, gambling wars going on?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And Citizens for a Better Alabama got on the board bandwagon to try to defeat gambling. Well, what we found out was they had put money into Citizens for a Better Alabama, over $1 million. Now, Citizens for Alabama never had more than $40,000 before they got that $1 million, and never had it ever again.
Where did it come from?
Riley and Hubbard raised that money, sent it to Citizens for Better Alabama, and then it went to Mike's businesses for him to skim it off. Now, the reason they didn't charge him on that is because the statute of limitations had run out.
Yeah, so that would have been one of the keystone charges.
Yeah.
That one didn't even make the surface.
No. And you know how we called up the man who ran Citizens for a Better Alabama? He's a very honest guy. And I asked him, he said, well, I'll tell you the truth, Bill. He said, you know, the governor would call me up, or somebody from the governor's office would call me up and say, hey, we're sending you $200,000 or $20,000 or $50,000, and Mike's going to send you an invoice. So it was from donors to Christians for a Better Alabama, straight to Mike's business.
This is when Riley was still governor?
Yeah, yeah. So that
one never even made the indictment.
No, because statute of limitation had run. But see, then we had the pattern. You know, and I tell you, you talked about my wife Susan. She is brilliant, and she does a lot of the digging into the finance and paperwork and all this stuff. You know, Hubbard was convicted on the charges that involve Capital Cups and CB Holdings. Well, we're digging through financial records one day, or she is, and we sit opposite each other. We have a big table we work on. Excuse me. And she looks over at me and says, I'm sorry, Steve, I got a tickle.
Sorry.
She reached over and she said, what is $33,333.33? And I said, well, that's a third of $100,000. She said, bingo. And I said, well, what got you on this? She said, well, I'm seeing a donation here that leads back to a guy named Robert Abrams out of New York for $33,333.33. And she said, that doesn't smell right. So that's how we got onto that. And she found the $100,000. They got the whole $100,000 into one of the Riley Hubbard PACs. Now, he wasn't charged with any crime but doing that, but that led us around to that business he had down there. And RSA put $78 million into that CB Holdings business, one of their businesses down there. So your retirement folks have got some money in his businesses. Now, it seems to be a very good business. I mean, Robert Abrams is a very prosperous man, very good businessman. I think he just made a bad decision investing in Mike.
With the Cup Company, or just some of his other businesses?
His other businesses. But, that big company, a smart man.
You know that the one that really the jury sunk their teeth into was that pharmaceutical thing.
That was the most interesting one we ever found. So that was the big one for us. For us, that was a big one because American Pharmacy Cooperative, Inc., we had heard their name before. We didn't think anything about it. But the state was looking at going into a model that's called PBMs, and that's where somebody manages the pharmacy benefits for Medicaid. It's about a $20 million, $30 million a year business. So we had heard that there had been some rumblings in the Speaker's office, and that Josh Blades, who was then chief of staff, had gotten upset with Hubbard. And then we found out that Hubbard had then gone down to the Ethics Commission and talked with Jim Sumner. And that just piqued mine and Susan's curiosity. We couldn't nail it down. And I literally got a call in the middle of the night, about 12 o'clock, and I don't stay up late, but woke me up, and I answered the phone, and the voice said, I'm not kidding you, this really happened. said, you need to look at PBMs. And of course, at that time of night, I couldn't think of what a PBM was. And so I got up, I wrote it down, and the next day I called Brandon Mosley, who works for us, and Brandon knows a lot about insurance business, knows a lot about everything. I said, what's PBM? He said, that's Pharmacy Benefit Management Program. I said, well, could you look up for me everybody in Alabama that might fit that bill, you know, that they could offer that? And he got me one of those together and saw APCI on there, but we still didn't have anything. So we started looking around, and we figured if they were going to hide it, they would put it in the budget, you know. And so we looked at the budget, couldn't find anything. And then it dawned on us, it must not have passed. It was in the other budget. So we went to the other budget, and there it was, 23 words that gave APCI a monopoly over the Medicaid portion of the Medicaid pharmaceutical benefits, and he got big time on that crime right there, and we found out he had a contract with them. I mean, it was just so obvious that that's a huge no-no. You cannot. Yeah. He voted for that bill 12 times. 12 times.
Now, how did Wren get involved?
Well,
he pled guilty and went.
Yeah. Greg Wren, of course, he worked for a company, and he was receiving, I think, $7,000 or something like that a month, where he was working for a company that was an offshoot of APCI, and you know, he was the one that Hubbard and got to carry the bill, and he was, or to place it into the language and all that, and so you know, he just rolled over. He got a misdemeanor where he could have gotten a felony.
The Senate knew that stuff was something was going on, didn't they?
I think so.
The guys up in the Senate knew that.
Yeah, I remember we wrote about that first contract. One of the senators came up to me and he said, "Bill, are you going to look into everybody's contracts?" He said, "Because I'd like to know about all of them." I said, "Well, we'll start, but we got so much on our hands with Mr. Hubbard, I don't know when we'll get to it." Because, you know, Steve, he did everything he could do, he and his friends, to put us out of business.
I know, yeah.
And it was tough times for me and Susan. We almost were out of business several times.
Well, y'all did. You stood by it. Stood by your guns and did the right thing. You know, I didn't follow as closely, obviously, as you were. I mean, I didn't follow from afar, but I did follow the jury and the trial to some extent.
Right.
And I don't attend trials that often. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't go to court. But I watched this. And I've written this. I thought the judge over there, Jacob Walker III, did an exemplary job. I thought he was really fair. He has a splendid reputation.
Oh, yeah.
15 years on the bench. His daddy was on the bench. Just a good, honest guy. Did a great job. And I thought that jury, I thought when I saw that jury, it was not a good jury demographically for Hubbard, but you know, nevertheless, it was selected by both sides. So it was a jury of Lee County people. But those jurors took their job seriously.
They really did.
They studied that. I watched him take notes, and I said, "That's a doggone." They didn't show any expression. You couldn't read anything to them. So I don't see any grounds for appeal in that case. And I've said this in my columns. Not being a novice in the legal business, and just seeing the facts in that case, I didn't know how stringent the ethics law was until the judge read the instructions to the jury. But I got to tell you, if I'm sitting in that jury box, I almost convict him on exactly the 12 counts he was convicted on. And I got to say this, a lot of people who've responded to me have said they didn't think that the sentence was tough enough. But that's about the sentence I was expecting.
Well, and to your point, I agree with you 100%. You know, we sat through every hearing.
Y'all were there the whole time.
Every hearing, for pretrial hearing for 2 years, we were there. Judge Walker gave the defense the benefit of doubt on everything they asked for during those pretrial hearings. They filed, I mean, thousands of motions, I guess.
And took about 2 or 3 years to get the trial.
Yeah, it did. You know, it was painful, but he was making sure that there would be no grounds for appeal. And I have seen a lot of judges. I've been to a lot of courts. Judge Walker runs the most organized, most disciplined court I have ever been in. I mean, if he says you've got a 10-minute break, if you're not back at 9 minutes, 30 seconds, you're getting locked out. And when he says we start at 8, he means you better be there at 7:59. And that's why the trial went so fast.
Yeah.
You know, they expected it to go much longer than it did, but because Judge Walker kept the trains rolling, that's why it went so fast. But you'll appreciate this piece of trivia I picked up. You know, Judge Walker, he's Judge Jacob Walker III. His father, as you pointed out, was Jacob Walker Jr., who was a judge. He was also the man, one of the two men that Fob James went to invest in his barbell business.
The daddy?
Yeah.
The judge?
Yeah.
Well, originally.
Yeah, he was a lawyer at the time, and Fob went to him and said, you know, I want you and this other guy to invest in my business. He's a prosperous lawyer there in Lee County, and he did. And I did not know that, and I caught that bit of trivia in the Alabama Encyclopedia, and I thought,
interesting.
That's interesting. And so, but he's a fine judge, and
I thought the jury did a good job.
They did.
I don't see any. I just don't see any room for appeal. The Court of Criminal Appeals is just not likely to overturn a jury verdict.
No, they're not, and it's like you said. These were solid ones. I mean, these were solid. I mean, they could have gotten him on the gas company, but you know, they had that contract that specified what he could and could not do, and then the ethics law approved it, but it wasn't approved the way Mr. Hubbard used it. But if they had any reasonable doubt, they just let that charge go.
Well, in the friends thing, I can see them applying that to Riley because they've been longtime friends.
Yeah.
You know, but that verdict, I think, is going to stand. I think. How long do you think they'll have time to delay him actually going to prison? About 6 months, a year?
Yeah, I think that's probably the max. I mean, we've talked to some very smart attorneys, I'm sure you have too, that handle this type of thing. And you know, the judge gave him 42 days to file any post-trial motions, and if they're denied, then they've got 42 days to file appeals. This Court of Criminal Appeals, you know, they came back with those motions that he filed to try to stop his trial. They came back within a matter of weeks, sometimes days. So this is not like a trial we've seen down there. I mean, they have to go on procedural. From what I understand, it's not. You know, Mr. Hubbard was on television the day that he was convicted and sentenced, and said, "Oh, we're going to expose the prosecution during our appeal, and we're going to be totally." There's no exposing here. This is on matters of the law, and you know, he said that, and you've heard him say it for 3 years, that he was going to expose the prosecution as being rogue and politically motivated, and he tried it, and it never worked.
No remorse.
No, he has no remorse.
He had no contrite. He came across as somewhat arrogant. I was told it was probably a mistake putting him on the trial. Bill, I tell you one thing, we're going to have to close shop because our time's up. This has been so informative for my viewers to watch this and see the investigative history of the Hubbard thing. We've got other things coming down the pike. You've revealed something today as we're filming this show a couple of days ahead of time.
Yeah.
If you have time, I'd love to have you back as this thing evolves about the investigation of the governor.
Yeah, love to come back. I mean, it's a sad time for our state, but you know, it's sometimes you've got to clean it up before it can get better.
Well, we've had a rough year.
Yeah.
We've had a rough year in Alabama, but we knew the Hubbard thing was coming, but all this stuff with Governor Bentley just came exposed this year.
I think it's going to get a whole lot worse before it gets better.
It looks that way. It really does. Folks, our guest tonight has been Bill Britt, who is the editor of the Alabama Political Reporter. Y'all read him online. He has a show called The V, which shows every Sunday. You can see it online. We're going to have him back on and talk about more of the sordid politics of Alabama we've had this year. We thank you folks for watching. Hope you tune again next week for Alabama Politics. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, sir.